sign language interpreter tonight is Melesha Owiti. Let's begin. Now, it has been the talk of town for the last 1 week. Tonight, President William Ruto has broken his silence, defending the cost of hiring the Boeing business jet to travel to the United States of America for the recently concluded state visit. The president, who jetted back into the country using the same jet, said the cost was lower compared to using the Kenya Airways means. The president's reaction, which comes days after KTN News shone the light on the expensive jet that cost the taxpayer in excess of 200 million shillings, has received a lot of backlash, with the opposition calling him out for trashing the austerity measures he has been preaching. But is the Kenya Airways option too expensive, as the president says? KTN's political affairs reporter Emmanuel Tor now interrogates.
In response to a story aired by KTN News a few days ago concerning the expensive Hustlers Jet Season 2 that has had tongues wagging, President William Ruto Sunday came out to defend the cost of his travel and the choice to use the Boeing business jet for the 4 days he was in the United States of America for a state visit. The head of state jetted back into the country Saturday evening aboard the same jet from the Abu Dhabi-based Royal Jet Company. Ruto posted on his X platform saying the cost of hiring the jet was lower than traveling on the national carrier KQ. The head of state went ahead to reiterate that he was a responsible steward of public resources and was living within the means he had told Kenyans to live within.
I think the expenditure on my trip are completely exaggerated. They are actually bordering on the ridiculous. I am very careful about the resources that I spend. In fact, I have cut down on funding to my office. I have cut down on funding to different government agencies. In fact, I have reduced by 30%.
A quotation requested and sent to KTN News by the Royal Jet Company puts the cost of hiring the state-of-the-art aircraft at a total cost of $748,600 that translates to about 98 million shillings one way for a 34-seater plane. Therefore, a round trip could potentially surpass the 200 million shilling mark, since Ruto also traveled from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., a trip spanning 2 hours. This amount is excluding the takeoff tax, landing tax and parking. Reports indicate the president stayed with the jet in the US for the whole week, which could push the total cost of the jet to well above 300 million shillings. The jet, owned and operated by a group of companies that leads the global premium private aviation sector, is chaired by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Hamad bin Tahnoon Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi, UAE. But how true is President Ruto's assertion that the KQ flight was more expensive than the jet that he used? Well, we did some digging on the KQ website and made a request for a business class seat return ticket. These are the most prestigious and the most expensive seats of any plane. We found out that it would cost 847,000 shillings for a return ticket to New York. Kenya Airways launched direct non-stop flights to JF Kennedy International Airport in New York, USA in 2018. The total flight time, 15 hours. If we round off the figure per seat to 1 million shillings, then it will cost 34 million shillings for the number of seats that are equal to the ones in the Boeing business jet that President Ruto traveled in. The Royal Jet has 8 VIP seats, 8 business and 18 standard. These will translate to a difference of about 164 million shillings less to fly to New York in a KQ plane. The president will need to connect to either Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, Georgia at a cheaper cost, since the two cities are less than 2 hours each from New York City.
How much was it used for your trip?
There are people who will answer those questions, but I can tell you from where I sit that the numbers being bandied around are ridiculous.
It would be very interesting for Kenyans to know how much it would have cost, right, to fly the president by KQ from Jomo Kenyatta to New York, or even indeed to Washington.
There was a heap of other people in the other flights. It's not that they were all in one plane. So we are only talking about those who are in the loyal jet, and it costed us 200 million shillings. And we still have not been told how much it costed us because the plane waited for him for all the time that he was in the US.
The opposition has now fired at William Ruto for ostensibly giving a vote of no confidence on the national carrier, which is trying to rise from the ashes of making losses due to bad publicity, among other reasons.
These are some of the things that we expect leaders to speak openly and be truthful about this thing. And then let Kenyans then judge which is cheaper.
KQ made losses amounting to 22.6 billion shillings in the year ending last December. But even with this colossal amount, KQ was still at a better place compared to other years. When they traveled to the US during their respective tenures, President Mwai Kibaki, who had a state visit to the US in 2003, flew Kenya Airways. His predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, who also loved traveling, was severally captured flying KQ to US after Kenya launched the direct flights to New York 6 years ago. A few days ago, Iceland's Prime Minister Bjarni Benediktsson landed in Malawi modestly aboard a Kenya Airways Embraer plane, sparking speculations as to why President Ruto would opt for a jet. In April this year, Tanzania President Samia Suluhu Hassan flew Tanzania Air to Ankara, Turkey for a 5-day state visit. It is not the first time President Ruto is finding himself in the receiving end concerning hiring expensive jets. In 2013, Parliament formed a committee to probe how he hired a luxury jet that flew him to 4 African countries for a shuttle diplomacy on his ICC case for 100 million shillings. Emmanuel To, KT News, Nairobi.
Well, that tweet by the president leaving more questions than